Okay.
Okay, so firstly, thank you very much for your participating in our webinar out of your busy schedule. And also, I hope all of you are doing well and also enjoying watching Olympic Games in Tokyo. My name is Satoshi Takayama, one of the co-founders of our company, Fenetre Partners. And I'm in charge of supporting overseas companies, especially in the industrial machinery and the component sectors, to enter and develop their business in Japan. And another co-founder is Yasushi Hasegawa. He will do the main part of this presentation after I introduce our company. And the topic of this webinar is how to develop OEM customers in Japan. In this presentation, we will explain that your goal is not the Japanese domestic market itself, but actually Japanese customers located all over the world are your target. But firstly, I'd like to let you know that at the bottom of this Zoom screen, you can find Q&A panel. So during our presentation, if you have any questions about our presentation or Japanese business in general, please use this Q&A panel to send your question. Then we will answer to your questions during the presentation or at the last part of this presentation. And also, if you have questions about a specific industry or about your company's business in Japan, then please contact us by email to reserve a separate online meeting with us. I will type our email address in the chat box later, but it is an email address of our webinar invitation. So then please send a message and we are happy to answer to your question and support you for your future business in Japan. Also, after this webinar, if you'd like to have a presentation material, also please send us an email message to us, then we can send it to you later. And then this page shows today's agenda presented by Yasushi. He'll explain why Japan, understand your customer first, reality of marketing and sales activities in Japan, options of market entry mode, and case studies, and Q&A. Okay, then Yasushi, please go to the next page. Okay, thank you. And in this page, I'd like to introduce our company briefly. Our company, Fenetre Partners, is one of the leading consulting firm of the trade, investment, and international marketing based in Tokyo. Our clients are medium to large size of companies, mainly from the US and Europe. We have many clients from overseas governmental organizations to support trade missions and also foreign direct investment as well. The main scope of our service is the market entry support to enter Japan, but not only by market researches or consulting services, but by implementation. And this implementation means, for example, business development activities, lead generation, and this is our company's strength. So what we mainly do with this implementation is for example, sales and marketing activities locally in Japan on behalf of our clients. So we work as if we are your local Japanese branch office. And we currently have 30 staff and we have worked more than 300 international projects since our company was established in 2008. And then please go to the next page. This page shows logos of our past and current clients. as explained earlier, we have clients of mainly from Europe and the US, and they are manufacturing company, also governmental organization, and industries of our clients, mainly industrial machinery, components, automotive, but we also have clients in the consumer products as well. Then from next page, my colleague Yasushi will explain the main topic of this presentation. So please enjoy his presentation, and please do not forget to post question at Q&A panel if you have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Takayama-san, for your introduction. I'm another co-founder of Fenetre Partners, Yasushi Hasegawa. I really appreciate your participation to our webinar today, and hopefully you can get the reality of the market condition of Japan and some new insights about market entry into Japan and the business development in Japan as well. So I'd like to start my presentation with this section 1, why you should choose Japan or should not. Let me explain about the overview of Japan economy. You can find some key figures on this slide. The number of prefectures is 47. It's like states in the US. The biggest one is Tokyo and Osaka and Aichi boroughs. And the land area is almost same with California. And the population is roughly one third of the US, and the GDP is 1/4 of the US. GDP is still world ranked number 3. It was number 2, but China has overtaken Japan in 2008 or 9, and now it's ranked number 3. And the problem is the GDP growth. Last year, due to the effect of COVID-19, it was -4%. But even under normal situation, our GDP growth rate is usually 0 point something or 1, sometimes minus point something. So our economy is not growing rapidly. It's very different from other Asian countries. And those two figures are, very shocking data. The first one, GDP per capita is roughly 40,000. Many of you guys think Japan is a rich country. Yes, it was 20 years ago. Japan was ranked world number 2 in terms of GDP per capita, but now it's ranked 26. So Japan is now getting poorer and poorer. Japan is not a rich country anymore. Another shocking figure is median age, 48. It's getting close to 50. So now Japan is the second oldest population in the world, next to Luxembourg. I think many rich retired people live in Luxembourg. That's why, the country is a sort of exception. So except for Luxembourg, Japan is the oldest. So what do you think about those information? Getting poorer and poorer and getting older and older. Do you think Japan is an attractive market? If you don't think so, you can leave this webinar. I don't think it's impolite, but hopefully you can get some positive messages from me later today. And this is our nominal GDP chart of Japan. Obviously, Japan was growing in the second half of the 20th century. In 1970s, 80s, 90s, many American and European companies have entered Japan because at the time, the economy was growing, demand was growing. So Japan really needed to get the supply from the US and Europe. But in this century, it's like flat. And you can remember what happened in 2008 financial crisis, and 2011, big earthquake happened. So during this period, our economy was terrible, but it's been recovering from 2012 until last year, or in 2019. Last year, we recorded minus 4% GDP growth rate. And this year, our government said it can be recovered. But I don't think so, because we plan to complete the vaccination by the end of November. But now, Tokyo and Okinawa, Okinawa is the South Island of Japan, are under the state of emergency. So restaurants and bars should close their stores after 8 p.m. and they can't serve alcohol under this state of emergency. So probably this figure would be plus 2 or 3%. I believe it's recovering, but probably we need 2 years to recover to the past level of our economy. So this is a reality, and China is like this. They have overtaken us in 2008, and now the size of economy of China is almost double of Japan. Yes, this is a reality. So please do not expect a high growth rate in Japan. And this is a very good example to highlight how the domestic Japan market is. This is the number of cars sold in Japan, the unit. At the peak time, early 90s, it was 8 million, but now it's about 5 million. I think 3 million is a huge drop. And so I have a question. Do you really think Japanese automotive companies are, doing well? Because it seems not promising to Japan automotive companies. But the reality is most of Japanese automotive players are growing steadily. You can see the charts on the slide. As I said, domestic sales is at the level of 5 million per year, but Japan has almost same figure of export from Japan to other countries. So the domestic production is still at this level, 10 million. In addition to that, most of Japanese car manufacturers have sales offices and factories all over the world, mainly in the US, Europe, China, India, Thailand. Some have in South Africa, UK. So this is our overseas production. It's been growing. So the total production has been growing as well. So I can say most of Japanese automotive players don't rely on the domestic market. So this is just one example, automotive, but many advanced engineering companies in Japan are growing by global expansion. So it means if you get into a business with a Japanese company, you will have a chance to deliver your products to their factories all over the world. This is our, biggest advantage in the case you have a business with a Japanese company. And this is the list of top 20 manufacturers in terms of growth in net sales from 2005 to 2014. That data is a bit old, but please remember what I said. In 2008, we had the financial crisis, not only in Japan, everywhere in the world. And we had the big earthquake in 2011. So during that period, our economy was really terrible. However, many big Japanese manufacturers recorded the big increase in net sales. The reason is, as I explained, you can see here, overseas sales ratio. So, for example, Toyota earns 78% outside Japan, Honda 86%. So they don't rely on the domestic market of Japan anymore. So probably you can see some negative news about the Japan economy, but many Japanese companies are growing steadily by global expansion. So I can say the Japanese market is not a good idea for you, but the Japanese companies could be good potential customers for you. It's somewhat tricky, but this is a reality of Japan. And this is a very interesting research. This research was conducted by the Chamber of Commerce of Industry of Germany, AHK Japan, their Japan office. They distributed the questionnaire to German companies located in Japan to ask which is bigger, A or B. I'd like to start with B. B is a sales revenue from Japanese customers in Japan. The A is a sales revenue from Japanese customers located outside Japan. So surprisingly, roughly half of respondents answered A is greater than B. So they are doing business development in Japan, but they are more outside Japan. And it's more surprisingly, 21% answered A is 4 times bigger than B. So this is the reason why still American and European companies are seeking opportunities in Japan. Of course, the market condition of the domestic market of Japan is not good, but you know, their objectives is not to get sales not only in Japan but also globally. The background of this objective is made by this purchasing decision system in Japan. If you are selling cheap products or a commodity like mold, spring, screw, or I don't know, very cheap and not special, you can directly sell to Japanese companies' subsidiaries, like in India, China, because the local engineers or purchasing people have a right to choose appropriate parts or tools. But if you are selling important components or equipment, like software for autonomous driving, AI, or some high quality engine filter for eco-friendly, or the kind of high-tech products, which is very important for their final products. This guy doesn't have a right to choose a component or equipment. If you are selling such products, you have to close a deal with the decision makers in Japan. And then you are required to deliver to Japanese factories all over the world. Because our culture is really centralized. In the later sections, I will explain Japanese business culture, but I can say it's somewhat hierarchical. And so usually Japanese key engineers make a decision what kind of components or parts they choose, and finally you have a chance to deliver to Japanese companies all over the world. And this is our additional information. This is our FDI stock in Asian countries. These guys are investors. These guys are destinations or markets. Obviously, Japan is a #1 or #2 investors in Asian countries. I believe some of you guys have entered some Asian markets like China, India, Thailand. So it means if you do business development in these Asian countries, you often encounter a Japanese company. But unfortunately, a decision maker is not there. So if you want to develop a Japanese customer in China, for example, you have to do sales and marketing in Japan. So I can say, if you are doing business in such Asian countries, it makes sense for you to do business development in Japan as well, because you ignore some very important customers in such countries. There are extreme cases, Thailand. I think over half of automotive players in Thailand are Japanese companies. So if you are selling in Thailand, your automotive parts, but you don't have a business development function in Japan, it means you ignore half of the market of Thailand. So this is additional information. Again, if you are doing business development in other Asian countries, I think it makes sense for you to do business development in Japan as well. So this is our conclusion and recommendation. You should Japan or you should not. So generally, I don't recommend Japan because people are getting old. They don't purchase a new car, or they don't purchase fabulous fashion or any. And we are getting poorer and poorer. People prefer buying cheap clothes like Uniqlo, or people prefer eating at a very cheap fast food restaurant. So if your strength is low pricing, Japan could be the good destination. But if not, Japan is not a good market in general. And if you are selling consumer goods, definitely Japan is not a good idea for you. Many famous big American players have withdrawn from Japan. And recently, I had the news. L'Oreal, the biggest European cosmetics guy, is withdrawing from Japan because they have very low market share. So market condition is not good in Japan. In addition to that, consumer preference is very different from the US and Europe. The past president of the US said, Japan is unfair because the American cars are not sold well in Japan. He criticized, but trade tariff of a car is 0%. We can't reduce it anymore. Simply, Japanese customers don't want to buy American car because of many reasons. First of all, our garage cannot accommodate a big American car, or many reasons. So it's not easy to be successful in Japan for consumer guys. But we recommend Japan to industrial players like supplier of this type of products. And in the case, it's a good idea to sell in Japan to big manufacturers in the advanced engineering sectors, like automotive, construction machinery, agricultural machinery, electronics, or any. So, and also you can find opportunities in the healthcare and the energy sectors. Simply, our population is getting older and older, so they need more, medical support, including pharmaceutical, medical devices. And for energy, after the big earthquake in 2011, we experienced a terrible incident of a nuclear plant in Fukushima, and many nuclear plants in Japan has been stopped their operation. And now Japan is, importing a lot of coal and oil for power generation. But now Japan has to reduce the emission of CO2. So the kind of unique technology to reduce CO2 emission will be appreciated in Japan. So this is our market overview and some recommendation if you should choose Japan as your destination or not. In the next session, I'd like to explain some Japanese business culture, because it's a good idea for you to understand their working culture background of why Japanese are like that. Probably some of you guys have experience to work with a Japanese company, and you might be frustrated with their very slow decision making or micromanagement. So let me explain. So I like to start from HR system in Japan, which is very different from the US and Europe. We usually start working for a company at the age of 22, 3, just after graduation of university. And Japanese companies recruit new graduates at the same time, and they start working as of April 1st every year. You know, it's like a boot camp over US Marine. It's more purchasing than recruiting, you know, and they usually keep working for the same company at the age of 65. It's not regulated by the law, but most of Japanese companies have a retirement regulation. So they release everybody at the age of 65, even though they are still performing very well. So it's a really collective. It's very different from individual risks in the US or Europe. And this is our super unique salary system. Actually, in Japan, your performance doesn't matter. The most important aspect to determine your salary is how many years you have been working for the same employer. Salary will be increasing like this or like this, and some are promoted to higher level, C-level like this. So this is a reality of Japan HR system in big Japanese companies. So probably if you achieve great objectives in the US or Europe, you should be promoted to a higher level. But in Japan, it doesn't happen. In order to be a manager, you have to reach 40 years old. And for senior manager, you have to reach 50 years old. And for directors, 55, board members, C-level, like this. So achievement or performance doesn't matter. So they don't have a strong motivation to change something about their job. This is one of the reasons why Japanese business people are super conservative, because they don't have a reason to take risk, but they don't want to fail because they may lose their position in the organization. So their behavior is really risk averse. And this is our organizational structure and the way to make a decision. There are a lot of titles. Some are, really tricky. Deputy something manager or like that. It's really hierarchical. And sometimes our American or European potential clients request us to arrange a meeting with C-level. Hey, Yasushi, I'd like to have meetings with the C-level of these electronics companies. But actually, it is meaningless because very high-level people are sort of sinecure, or they are working at the honorable position. They have a secretary, car, a private room, but they do nothing. I'm somewhat exaggerating, but at least they are not interested in a particular supplier, because that kind of choice should be made by a lower level. The reality is of the decision-making system in the big Japanese companies are middle, up and down. In the US, for example, a boss can make a decision on everything, and all others have to follow that decision. But in Japan, it's somewhat tricky. It's a consensus base. Middle managers have to get the approval from their bosses at the same time. Their colleagues, their subordinates, so they need to, make consensus in their organization, especially in the case they change something in their business. So this is the reason why it takes time a lot for a Japanese company to make a decision. And some culture is really tricky. Backroom deal. Actually, most important decisions are always made in the backroom or under the table sometimes. Actually, I experienced they made a very important decision at the bar in Japanese, izakaya, with drinking beer. So everything is decided in an informal way. So in the official presentation or meeting, people, do ceremony. It's like a ritual. So presentation skill is meaningless in Japan, actually. So this is your customer's organization and the decision-making system. So you have to find middle manager to lower level who specifically work in the field where you want to really sell your products. And another problem is in the big organizations, they have tens of thousands of engineers, and their jobs are, break down into very small, jobs. So it's not easy to identify your key person in such a big organizations. So some of our potential clients say, I like to just have a meeting with target key engineers in Sony or Toyota. But I can say, can you guess how many days or months we need to identify such a key engineer from tens of thousands of engineers? So it's not easy just to have a meeting with a key engineer in Japan. And I'd like to explain some business culture in Japan. So Japan has a very high score in 3 dimensions. This is a famous framework, cultural dimension developed by Hosted. Japan has a very high score in masculinity. The culture is very competitive. While the score is very low in Latin America or Latin Europe, it's the culture is feminine. So in such culture, people are really, competitive. For example, people are admired if they prioritize work rather than their parents' death. If my parents die and I keep working or speaking at this webinar, people admire, oh, he's really professional. I know it's really strange, but Japan is like this. And the next one is uncertainty avoidance. I know in the US, people love taking risks to get more return. But in Japan, this tendency is very high. Most people don't want to change. And another important dimension is long-term orientation. So they like to keep a good relationship with a particular business person or a particular supplier for many years. So imagine this culture. They don't want to change. They like to keep working together with a particular supplier. And your competitor, Japanese suppliers are super competitive. They don't sleep until they satisfy their customers. So this is a reason why Japan is a very tough market for American and European suppliers. And this culture was made by our history. Probably many of you guys have heard this very brutal rule in the past. It was recently abolished, just 150 years ago. Before that, samurai had to commit suicide if they made a mistake. Of course, it's not available anymore, but we still have such kind of mindset. Mentally, we have to commit a suicide if we make a mistake. So this is a reason why we Japanese have a very high uncertainty avoidance score and masculinity as well. Probably this culture is super masculine, right? So this is your potential customers' culture in Japan. Now I'd like to go to the next section, which explains the reality of marketing and sales in Japan. First of all, the language is a very tough barrier for non-Japanese speaking people. I guess some of you guys have sent emails in English to Japanese companies, but they usually ignore. And please do not make a phone calls to them. It's not a good idea for most of Japanese companies. And this is a big burden. Your marketing material or technical documents should be translated into Japanese because most of Japanese business people don't speak. Even in the big company, I guess over 90% of engineers don't feel comfortable to read English or to speak English. And all services must be provided in Japanese. Of course, your counterpart might be able to speak English fluently, but most of engineers or business people in Japan don't speak and don't understand English. So please be well prepared when you start the business development in Japan. And another important aspect is the difference in sales process. In open and flexible country, people accept your meeting offer easily. Okay, let's meet and have an open discussion. And probably some Q&A or negotiation will happen, and you reach an agreement. But you will have troubles in implementation in such countries. Sometimes they ignore a contract, or they try to cancel it. You should go forward and back forth. It's full of troubles in such country. In Japan, it's very different. First of all, it's not easy to reach a right person. Again, it's difficult to find a key person in tens of thousands of people. And even we have reached the right person, they usually, ignore our meeting offer, and they try to decline our meeting offer. So we have to be, really patient to keep making calling to such person. And then we usually have a lot of technical discussion. Of course, our American or European clients said, hey, it's easy to have a meeting. They can ask any questions on the spot. Why don't they agree our meeting offer? But they don't write that way. And even in the case we reach the first meeting, the content of meeting is mostly greeting. You do your company presentation, they do, and have some small discussion, and they usually say, let me take it back to our team, and let me have a discussion internally. So a lot of Q&A, internal negotiation on their side, and finally you can agree. You can reach an agreement. But there's a big advantage. Implementation is very smooth with the Japanese customer. So I don't know which is better for you, but please understand this big difference in such countries. And the communication style is very different from American way. People prefer indirect message. This is our framework to explain how communication style is different in each country. Low context means people prefer direct communication. Everything should be explicit. Swiss and German guys are extreme, and the US is on this side. But here, Japan's on the opposite direction. Our communication way is really, implicit. People don't speak honestly. They usually speak with a lot of sugar coating or mitigation. My colleague Satoshi has a very funny experience with his American manager in his past job. Can you explain it?
Yes. Yeah, I had a terrible experience when I worked for Japanese subsidiary of a US automotive component manufacturing company, and I was a kind of sales engineer, and I sold such a components to Japanese customer automotive company, but the customer found a kind of defect of the product. Then it was found in the production line, so they were so much got angry with me. Then it took a lot of time to fix the problem and find the cause of the problem. Then finally, our customer told me, "Hey, please call your boss in the States, then take him from the US to Japan." Then I seriously explained to the manager in the US, "Hey, the customer, Japanese customer is really, he got really angry with us. So you should fly from the US to Japan to apologize to Japanese customer." Then he actually did. Then we visited together to Japanese customer. Then I expected that Japanese customer will strongly claim to the US manager. But what he said was, "Hey, welcome to Japan. How was your trip from the US to Japan? Are you enjoying Japanese food?" or something like this. So he never claimed to the US manager. Then after the meeting, the US manager told me, "Hey, the Japanese customer did not angry with me. So why did you request me to fly all over from the US to Japan?" But on the following day, I visited the customer again. Then once again, the Japanese customer again got angry with me. So that means the Japanese customer normally do not show their anger to the overseas people because he or Japanese people try to be polite to the to the overseas people. So this is what I experienced.
Yeah, it's a typical case, especially with the foreigner. They usually try to avoid a conflict. So their message is really implicit. For example, if you ask a Japanese business person, like, "Are you interested in our products?" I think everyone say yes, yes, and you expect a business, but after you come back to the US or your home country, they ignore your email. It often happens. So please do not believe what they say, and you have to analyze what they think. So it's not easy, country in terms of communication, and it's same for us. Japanese have to analyze what others think. It's very complicated. So that's why I prefer American way or German way, because it's easy to communicate in a logical way. But most of Japanese prefer non-logical way, non-explicit way. So another point is they are not good at discussion. They usually say, "Please bring it back to our office, and I will come back to you." So they usually value documents rather than speaking blah blah blah. So as Satoshi explained, they are really, super kind or a nice guy to a foreigner. So please do not believe what they say. And this is about our customer relationship. So probably some of you guys have this term, K-RETS. K-RETS means exclusive supply chain group. For example, Toyota has Toyota Tsusho as its distributor, and the Toyota suppliers. They have no financial relationship, but it's really regulated by Toyota. So Honda supplier usually is not allowed to sell to Toyota. So it's really, exclusive. And it's very hierarchical. If Toyota is not happy with the price of a supplier, they usually send the people to their factory and analyze what's going on, and they push price down. And this relationship is very hierarchical. Suppliers cannot say no to a big manufacturer. I know the relationship between the manufacturer and the supplier is somewhat equal in the US and Europe, but in Japan, a big Japanese manufacturer look down suppliers. Of course, they don't do that on an explicit way, but implicitly they do. And personal relationship is important. In the past, personal relationship means to give a gift or to drink together. But nowadays, it's prohibited in a big Japanese company due to the reasonable compliance. Now, you can interpret it a trust between you and your customer. For example, in the case of defects, your customer, a key engineer, may lose their face. Face work is a very important aspect in our culture. So in that case, you are supposed to do anything to solve that problem immediately. So if they think or they feel safe with you, it's a good relationship between you and your customer. And for keeping a good relationship, you are required to visit their factory very often. But under COVID-19, video conference is getting popular and popular in Japan, and I can't predict how it will be in the future. Probably some meetings can be replaced by online meetings, but I think still manufacturers require suppliers to visit their factories very often. And the quality requirement. This is another very tough entry barrier for American and European companies. Perfectionism and micromanagement. I have a very unique case. This is a specification provided by a European company to a factory in China. This is a sort of outsourcing of a manufacturing process. This type of simple products. And this is provided by a Japanese company to the same China factory. Both products look very similar, but the way of showing requirements is very different. So again, Japanese people are perfectionists due to the risk-averse culture. So if they make a mistake, they have to commit suicide, not physically nowadays, but mentally. So they really want to avoid any kinds of aspects which can be related with defects. And if they find the defects in your products, they ask you why 5 times. If you answer it was a human error, they will ask you why that human error was happened. So and you are required to submit a lot of reports. So it's not easy to deal with Japanese engineers. Probably you guys are business development people or sales or marketing managers. If you agree this culture, accept this culture, but your engineers still don't like this. So the very important job of you is you persuade your engineers to adapt to this type of culture in order to be successful in Japan. Okay, in this section, I explain some distribution channel strategy. Actually, Japan was on this stage in 1970s, 80s, 90s. The situation in China and India is somewhat similar with Japan during that period. When a market is growing, demand is also growing, of course. That's why distributors are seeking new suppliers in order to meet the growing demand. But if it's declining, you can guess what's happening. Basically, the opposite things are happening. Demand is shrinking, so suppliers usually try to reduce inventory and the number of suppliers. So it's not easy to find the distributor at this stage. Probably it's almost same in Germany. Markets are fixed by several strong players, which can be explained by oligopoly. So in that case, manufacturers may have a reason to invest in a particular target market, but local distributors are not interested in investing in such a situation. So this is a reason why it's not easy to find a good distributor in Japan. And this is another case why in some cases you can't find a distributor. This is a case of engine filter producer. And they had a meeting with a distributor, Japanese distributor, to construction machinery companies. And had a meeting, and this guy expect this distributor promote their products to end users. But reality is different. In Japan, in construction machinery or automotive industry, the main role of a distributor is just-in-time delivery. They usually don't promote a particular product because they are delivering thousands of parts, components to end user like Toyota, Komatsu. So now existing suppliers are providing similar products with yours, and you want to replace their products by yours. But for distributor, it doesn't make any difference between this guy's products and your products are somewhat similar and prices are in the same range. So they have no reason to promote particular products. They just think whichever, as far as this guy is happy with that component. So in such industry, you have to do sales and technical discussion directly with your end user, like Komatsu, Toyota, Honda. So it's a very tricky market. So basically, there are some market entry options, and people usually expect you don't invest, but you want to get sales by finding a local distributor. So they sell your products automatically and you are happy. But of course, you don't need to spend the big money upfront. But at the same time, you can't control because they work for their own interests. They don't work on behalf of you. While this option requires a very, big amount of investment at the beginning. So it's a trade-off, but we usually recommend here business development on outsourcing basis. Like you hire sales and marketing firm like us on the retainer base, and you have to pay some small money monthly, but you can get a high control because your sales rep works for your interests. So, of course, having a local distributor has a pros and cons. You can see the advantages: low investment, low risk, and you can get the experience and the customer base as well. But there are a lot of disadvantages, especially for technical products. Difficult to have a good relationship, not easy to have a good technical discussion. You can't get the market information, especially contact information of your end users. Sometimes market coverage is limited. They just sell one industry, but they don't sell your second target industry, for example. It's not easy to control sales activities and end user pricing. Low service level at the beginning. And again, the most attractive point of the Japanese market is to sell Japanese companies outside Japan, but the local distributor don't think so because their market coverage is Japan. You have a big reason to do business in Japan, but most of the Japanese distributors are not interested in investing in your business in Japan. And the most important problem is here. You never know why it doesn't go well in Japan if you just do business through a local distributor. Finding a local distributor would be a good start point if you don't have. But sooner or later, your sales hit the ceiling and you have to think about another solution. In the last slide section, I would like to explain some case studies. The first one is a component for plant equipment. What we did is here, we made a contract with that company and started the marketing and sales activities on outsourcing base. They pay monthly fees to us, and we sent our staff for product training, and we translated all the marketing material. And we do research to identify potential customers, and we met most of our target customers. And it turned out, the voltage standard in Japan is different from their home country. So they need to spend their 1 million investment to adapt to that regulation. In addition, it's a tough situation. The strongest competitor in Japan has advantages in both quality and price. So it's not promising at all. But our staff, my colleague Satoshi, visited many Japanese companies and found a strategy. This is a client. This is a Japanese customer. Here, Japan. So their target are Japanese companies which export to overseas plants, like in Middle East or Southeast Asia. In this case, voltage difference doesn't matter. At the same time, this company has a very strong competency or capability of maintenance all over the world. So this is their sales strategy in Japan, which was established our staff by visiting many Japanese companies. So they increased sales revenue from Japan, and now they sent an expat from their Asian headquarters. He speaks very good Japanese. And at the same time, they started their M&A search. Partly, my colleague Satoshi helped this activity. So what they did is, they hire us on outsourcing base. Our staff worked on business development in Japan, And then they sent their expat to Japan and took over this function. And the guy developed a distributor. At the same time, their headquarters is seeking M&A opportunities. So this is their market entry strategy. So now they are increasing their sales from Japan. The case two is industrial electronics components supplier. What we did in this case is almost same with the previous one. The challenges is here. They have a wide range of products and a wide range of applications, but their local distributor mainly sells more simple products to their customers, and they have no idea about target segmentation. And what we did is we visited many customers and have a discussion, and finally, we found some good segmentation where our clients can win, like products B to industry 2 or like this. So it's very difficult to understand good market segment through market research, because you have to have a technical discussion with engineers again and again, especially in the case your products have to be customized. So finally, this client increased the sales revenue from Japan and had a chance to deliver to a Japanese customer in China. So they made a business in Japan, and finally they developed Japanese customers in China as well. And now they have a good relationship with their local distributor. The owner of that distributor invested in the client. It's a very small share, but it means their partnership is very solid. What they did is they hire us as a Japan sales rep on the retainer base, and we developed their distributor, and we work together with distributor to develop many Japanese customers. And the client has established a good relationship with the distributor, and then they terminated the contract with us. It's like a graduation for us. So now they don't need to pay any costs, but they can sell through that distributor. Their business is really growing in Japan now. So this is a recommendation. If you are selling technical products, you should not waste your money a lot for research and consulting. Our recommendation is test marketing and strategy planning at the same time on outsourcing base. You work with a sales and marketing company like us. And if you reach a certain level of sales revenue or profit, you can take the next step, like having your own sales subsidiary in Japan and hire local talents by yourself, or acquiring a Japanese company. So this is the end of my presentation. On this slide, I say, again, our strength is here. We are very strong for business development on outsourcing basis. But at the same time, if you are very new to Japan, the Japanese market, we are happy to do some market research, business matching with the distributors. And if you have big money and you don't hesitate investing in Japan, we are also happy to support your direct investment or M&A activities. Thank you very much for participating in our webinar today, and hopefully you can get new insights about our market entry into Japan and the business development as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Yasushi. And we actually got some questions, but I've already answered privately to each of them. So I think there's no more question to answer, and it's also already the time to close the webinar today. So in case you have any questions, please feel free to send us an email. of the invitation email info@fenetre.co.jp. Then we are happy to answer to your question. Also, in case you need our presentation, also please send us an email to us. Okay, so now it's time to close our webinar. So we'd like to thank you very much for your time to join our webinar. And please feel free to contact again, once again. And okay, then thank you very much. And once again, please enjoy watching the Olympic game in Tokyo. It's very exciting.
For us, it's time to start drinking beer.
Yeah.
Watching Olympic Games.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Have
Then
a
have a
good day.
nice day. Good day. Bye-bye.
Yeah.